aspects of this plan or however we proceed on any form of transit and transportation. So this is a special joint committee meeting intended for council members to be able to have an opportunity to discuss the proposed Metro Nashville transportation plan presented by the mayor's office and specifically by Ms. DeMassimo, who joins us on their behalf today. Some colleagues might not realize this, but I joined the Metro Council directly from the Nashville MTA Board of Directors, where I spent 7 years directly involved in helping the city develop better transit policy and push toward implementation. In some fundamental ways, this topic is why I ran for council, so I'm grateful to the Cooper administration and Ms. DeMassimo for keeping transit in the spotlight. For some context, the average American consumer spends more than $8,000 annually on automobile transportation. In Nashville, the average cost of transportation has reached nearly equivalent to the cost of housing. So in that regard, mobility is an equity issue. Now, I'd also like to take just a second to thank the guests who are joining us. We do have representatives of when I was on the board, Nashville MTA, now WeGo Public Transit, Public Works, the Mayor's Office, the Transit Alliance of Middle Tennessee, the Greater Nashville Regional Council, the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce, the Nashville Downtown Partnership, Metro Legal, the Southeastern Laborers, Conexión Americas, as well as Walk Bike Nashville. We're only obviously going to have time for a few folks to be able to speak on specific elements of the plan, but as council members have questions, I think that broad base of people participating today may want to chime in and we may want to give them opportunities to chime in. But the agenda we've prepared for today will allow Ms. DeMassimo to present the plan on behalf of the mayor's office. Then we will invite Michael Skipper of GNRC to help us understand the federal and state landscape for transit implementation in Middle Tennessee. Next, we will invite Jessica Dauphin of the Transit Alliance in Middle Tennessee to help us understand regional concerns and considerations. And finally, we'll have Nora Kern and Lindsay Ganson of Walk Bike Nashville discuss the active transportation components. And after that, I will invite responses from my co-facilitators and then open the floor to broad discussion from council members. I think the introductory session shouldn't last more than 45 minutes. We've got 2 hours reserved for this meeting, so there should be plenty of time for open discussion. Before we begin, I want to clarify the public notice, which had some language pulled from a communication to council members, could have been interpreted, and I think by a few people was, as suggesting that this was a meeting with public comment. Unfortunately, given the time constraints and the manner in which this is being considered by council, this forum was established specifically to give council members an interactive forum to discuss the proposed plan. Anyone is welcome to send follow-up correspondence to mayor@nashville.gov or council members at nashville.gov. If you want to review the plan in its entirety, there are 2 relatively easy ways to do that. If you go to nashville.gov/mayor and click on transportation, there is a link there on the nashville.gov website under the mayor's office page. Similarly, if you go to Nashville and go to our Legislative Information Center on the most recent meeting agenda, the resolution that has us considering the plan links to the entire document as an exhibit. So a couple pathways if you are reviewing that at home or want to look at it before council considers it. And so now we will move after those introductions to Ms. DeMassimo to give us an overview of the Metro Nashville Transportation Plan. Thank you, Ms. DeMassimo.
Absolutely. Council members, thank you so much, and partners in the community who've joined us today. Thank you so much for the opportunity on behalf of Mayor Cooper to overview this very important plan for Metro Nashville. We know how important having a plan that represents Metro Nashville is in making sure that we interact as strongly as we can in the regional process that Michael is going to talk about with the GNRC here in just a few moments, and also prepares us for the very important opportunities with a new incoming administration at the beginning of 2021 nationally. And so we know how important this can be as that sort of a tool. Nashville Mayor John Cooper's commitment to a new People First transportation plan began during his first year in office. and we advanced even with the challenges in Metro Nashville. I'm going to just take a few moments to walk us back over this past year. Very important. His campaign transportation commitments and focus areas included upgrading the bus system, tackling traffic and modernizing our traffic management system, investing in neighborhood infrastructure, including sidewalks, bikeways, greenways, and traffic calming, improving safety and advancing the mayor's Vision Zero action plan, and exploring the creation of a Metro Nashville Department of Transportation or Mobility and Infrastructure to enhance our efficient, effective management, performance, and accountability. Prior to the COVID limitations on in-person meetings, we had completed and hosted 11 community listening sessions, and largely before the COVID in-person meeting limitations, but some occurring afterwards. We've also hosted and engaged in 36 stakeholder listening sessions all across Metro Nashville with all sorts of groups, as well as meeting with all of the council members. We sort of hosted 2 rounds of meetings with council members to hear from you as we were getting started and to hear from you again as we were advancing the formulation of the plan. So nearly 3,000 individuals contributed to expressing what those priorities needed to be. And the strongest priorities in Metro Nashville in nearly every meeting that we went to were transit, sidewalks, and state of good repair. And when you look at the plan, you will see that the representation of priorities by our community and by those that we heard from is directly reflected in the levels of investment in the plan. So we listened and we made sure to reflect what we heard. The plans will be advanced with individual funding strategies, while more comprehensive, perhaps dedicated funding possibilities are reserved for future consideration, perhaps. And we relied upon the value. We know how much work Metro Nashville has already committed over some number of years in very important planning efforts, including those from WEGO, Metro Public Works, and Metro Planning. And we made sure to utilize the resources that were there to leverage the value of those initiatives. And we also made sure, though, to look at the cost estimates and scope validations, those sort of technical details, to make sure that we were still accurately representing the projects in that regard. And it is important to note that while it is very detailed, this plan is a living document and will be updated as our community opportunities and challenges evolve. And although some of the projects in this plans probably, but again, we talked about the fact that we wanted to be sure and leverage all of that existing investment across many plans, important plans that have occurred in Metro Nashville. So a lot of the plans projects may seem very familiar. We also made sure that we engaged in refreshed approaches that look at what our current circumstances are and what our current opportunities are. So things like innovation corridors on Charlotte and Gallatin that also incorporate multimodal improvements, transit and so forth, but also try to leverage and take advantage of demonstrations of technology and sustainability that are important. Efforts like the traffic system modernization and project development design delivery with the equity and design tool. The notion that we can build equity into each and every project and therefore build a system that at its core is a stronger system of equity is an important one. And that's something that we heard throughout Metro Nashville. We also have been on the management side of this, working with Public Works and their existing role in managing our transportation program, and have developed new tools like a construction management manual. We performed a very robust analysis of the funding strategies that are available, and you'll see that from the large number of initial funding strategies that we explored, we curated that down to some 70 or so that we really feel like are doable and reasonable for us to assume here as we begin to engage in the funding strategies for each and every project. So we are very excited about this. We also heard Some other, in addition to the equity consideration, we also heard concerns around affordable housing, and you will note that two of the major transit corridors in the plan, the Clarksville Pike and the Murfreesboro corridor, also include affordable housing components that will make sure to pair those kinds of needs and investments with the actual transportation project as it advances. And the other thing that I think that we are extremely proud of and that I want to point out in this overview is equity is not only a matter, it's certainly a matter of reaching into the communities that have been underserved and underrepresented and reaching into segments of our population that have. It's also a matter of, and it's one of the things that we heard when we first started this journey a year ago, was of reaching as many people as we can, of reaching everyone in the community so that there are investments throughout Metro Nashville. And I know that you've likely seen and reviewed that 92% of our population and 94% of our employment will be within a half mile of a project. So a culvert, a bridge, a transit project, a sidewalk, a traffic signal improvement, whatever it might be. But that is an exemplary level of performance for this transportation plan to be reaching that much of Metro Nashville. Additionally, it is a performance-driven plan, and you will also further note that for many of the categories, and sidewalks is a good example, that the level of investment that's proposed in here would address 80% of the sidewalk backlog throughout Metro Nashville. So we are extremely pleased to present this to you today and look forward to answering your questions later in the agenda. Thank you, Council Member.
Right, thank you so much for joining us and for the overview. I know you've been making your way around the community. I know you've been in several forums to present this, and some council members have had exposure, but I do think that today's meeting is a great opportunity for members to dive in and sink their teeth into it. I know you all presented us with the full plan just before Thanksgiving, so I'm hopeful that people have some good questions prepared. Before we get to that, I think, again, wanting to set some context for this, and I know the plan takes into account a lot of previous planning efforts. I want to invite Michael Skipper from the Greater Nashville Regional Council to talk about the important ways in which this will tie into state and federal planning and funding processes. Michael, do we have you on the line?
Council member, I am online. Can you hear me okay?
Great. Yep, I sure can. So I will hand the speaking stick over to you. And if you don't mind just giving some background on the GNRC and MPO process just for a minute or two, and just a 90-second overview of what your organization is, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And I don't know if my video is working. If it is, great. If it's not, you're not missing anything. But it's a pleasure to be with you all. Good to see you, Council member. Good to see all of you. To your question, I guess this is in a way an introduction, but also a reintroduction of myself to the council body. Many of you know me from my stint as the director of the Nashville Area Metropolitan Planning Organization for 9 years, and what was housed within the Metropolitan Planning Department. The MPO, the acronym for that organization, it should be, if it's not already, very important to you, because a lot of the things that Faye has talked about as a part of the Mayor Cooper's transportation plan, to the extent that it's going to rely on state coordination and federal funding, the MPO process, as it's laid out across the nation through the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration, we've become not only a process that you need to understand, but a tool that can help you get the things done that you are interested in getting done across the county. A little bit about GNRC, though. So most of you are aware that the MPO process, for its entire history, which dates back to the early 70s in the Nashville area specifically, up until 2017, was housed within metropolitan government in the planning department. It's a regional board that collaborates, provides opportunity for city and county mayors across a multi-jurisdictional area to collaborate on transportation plans and programs to satisfy federal laws for the use of federal funds within our region. A couple of years ago, it migrated from Metro government over to the Greater Nashville Regional Council, which is a regional organization that has historically done a regional collaboration on economic and community development, social services, and the like. So it's been a place for decades for city and county mayors to think about the future and to orientate infrastructure investments accordingly and to get the most out of state and federal grants. For a long time, though, the transportation piece of that was missing from those regional conversations within the regional council, since it was sort of separately conducted, that business was separately conducted up until a couple of years ago. So GNRC in its present form represents 13 counties across Middle Tennessee. We're the federally recognized MPO for the Nashville metropolitan area, which Davidson County is a part of. We're also the Economic Development District that works on behalf of the U.S. Federal Department of Commerce and Economic Development Administration, which helps align the investments that the Department of Commerce is making into infrastructure for the purposes of job creation with regional plans. And we're also the Area Agency on Aging and Disability, which is a way for city and county mayors and the communities that they represent to collaborate on how best to use federal funds and by extension state funds to improve a sustained quality of life for older Middle Tennesseans, primarily focused on making sure they can age in place as much as possible. So one of the things, council member, that we'll be prepared to talk about this evening is the alignment and coordination between phase efforts and what we're doing on a regional scale to make sure that the vision that you all have for Davidson County, again, to the extent that it's going to be relying on state coordination and federal funding, is going to be well positioned to take advantage of those federal tax dollars that are going to be distributed back to Tennessee and Middle Tennessee specifically. We're also going to be making sure, though, that we're trying to solve transportation challenges from a broad perspective. So much of what we do at GNRC is about connecting the various silos that exist in government, whether it's transportation or other aspects of public works or social services, making sure all those conversations are connected so that we're leveraging state and federal funds across the board in a way that are accomplishing our goals. So I'm happy to be with y'all this evening, happy to talk a little bit more specifically about the status of the regional transportation plan, how it relates directly to the plan out of the mayor's office that y'all would be considering soon for endorsement, and how we could work together to get it implemented over the coming years.
Great. Thank you, Michael. That's helpful background. And Jessica, I see you online as well, here to represent maybe both, wearing two hats, Transit Alliance and maybe Connect Mid-TN as well. If you would like to talk about those two organizations, and again, help us think through the importance of the impact of the region in terms of transportation planning efforts. Are you with us and able to jump in here?
I am. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you.
Excellent. Perfect. Councilmember O'Connell, I'll do my best. And yes, I will represent two organizations simultaneously if I can. My name is Jessica Dauphin, the president and CEO of the Transit Alliance of Middle Tennessee. We are a nonprofit that works in 10 counties of Middle Tennessee to build support for funding multimodal transit in the region. The Connect Mid-10, which council member was referring to as CMT, is a diverse group of businesses and organizations that have formed a coalition to promote near-term transit solutions and improvements while keeping an eye on dedicated funding longer term. Okay. I just want to say that out front, I'm really pleased to be here talking with the council about transit at this point. This has been a bizarre and baffling year, and as it wraps up, it gives me hope that we are revisiting this important quality of life issue for Nashvillians. It has been 2.5 years. Am I freezing? No.
I froze for a second, but I couldn't tell if it was you. I'm hearing you, so.
Okay, good. It's been 2.5 years since the Let's Move Nashville referendum failed in 2018. That's quite a long time. And as we return to this issue, it's important that we come together and set a plan in motion to see some success on behalf of Nashville residents. I want to say that the Transit Alliance does support this transportation plan as it's proposed as a first step toward addressing Nashville's current transportation and mobility challenges. The Transit Alliance is encouraged by the stated priorities of the plan, including updating the bus system by looking at the Better Bus Network proposed by WeGo. They have very many significant updates and service enhancements there. Modernizing traffic and management, investing in neighborhood sidewalks, bikeways, and greenways, improving safety, and exploring a National Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, which could be important in terms of managing performance and increasing accountability for these projects. We see this as a step in the right direction in building capacity and laying a foundation for a more ambitious plan with dedicated funding in the future. Regionally, we're looking at it in terms of weighing the costs of doing nothing as opposed to doing something. Several counties around Davidson County eagerly await our leadership in this issue, in this topic, in this area. And if we continue to wait this out, we risk falling further behind our sister cities across the nation in terms of transportation and transit, especially in dedicated funding for transit. For reasons of equity, environment, health, and economy, transit is incredibly essential. Other cities have arrived at this conclusion ahead of us, and we can't afford to lose our economic edge. Nashville deserves better. Investing in transportation is investing in ourselves, and it's vital to our economic competitiveness. I don't know if you know this, but 15 out of 18 transit ballots passed this year on November 3rd. But 47 of 52 passed this entire year. So there were other elections throughout the year. So 47 cities have voted themselves to tax themselves more for dedicated funding for transit in a year of a pandemic. Like, I think that we all want to make this an excuse, but it really doesn't have to be. So I want to get back to our transportation plan, the one we're talking about right now. Community-based and right-sized. That's what I've heard, and that's what I expected. I don't expect this transportation plan to get any national attention or spotlight or headlines. But it is a plan to get us current, to get us re-energized, recentered, and refocused on the topic of transit and transportation. By endorsing this plan, Nashville has an opportunity to demonstrate collaborative and coordinated action between departments while adding sincerity to our ability to capture funding due to already having a stated municipal support. As the economy
as well. I don't see them on the list. Nora or Lindsay, are you here? I'm trying to look through the attendees to see if they may be. Oh yeah, Nora Kern is an attendee, and it looks like Lindsay is as well. So Michael, can we maybe bump them up?
They've been bumped up.
All right, perfect. Nora and Lindsay, are you online at this point? I see Nora.
Hi, yes, this is Nora. I am here, and I was going to, I am actually going to leave it to Lindsay, our Director of Advocacy and Communications, to make a few comments.
Lindsay, I see you look muted. Can you unmute yourself? Let's try that.
Hello.
Hey, there we go.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Lindsay, you're real quiet. Can you get your volume up at all?
Yes. How is this? Is that any better?
That is much better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to thank the council for having us today to speak. And say we shared some comments on the plan via email at the beginning of the month, and I just wanted to quickly summarize them here and say that we really applaud the mayor's office for this effort to digest all of the existing plans and put forth a new plan, especially during this really difficult year. But we do have concerns about the feasibility of the plan and the lack of a clear timeline for funding the projects contained in the plan. And we're really hoping the members of Metro Council can take on the leadership and the next steps in getting aspects of this plan funded and moving forward. And we appreciate the large numbers discussed in the plan in terms of investments in walking and biking and safety improvements, as well as the focus on elements of WeGo's Better Bus Plan. The plan in and of itself has a lot of great improvements and big numbers and big projects for how we can really make our city more walkable and bikeable and livable and more connected, all those good things. But what we don't see is actually the timeline to make it happen and how we're going to make incremental progress towards building those projects and getting those improvements in the short term. So we'd really like to see moving forward more of a commitment to more engagement as projects get put forth. Understanding that when you go after opportunistic funding or grants, things end up on a timeline that works for the federal funding or the application and not always the community. So we want to make sure that we're getting communities' input and people's input all along the way to get these projects built. We also want the council to be aware of the really low number of staff that are available to work on walking and biking and planning projects right now at the Metro Public Works and at Metro Planning, and really at all the departments responsible for transportation planning have at all-time low staffing levels. So really more funding is needed in this next budget cycle in the fiscal year 2022 operational budget to make any progress towards anything discussed in the plan. We need more staff and staffing needs to make that happen. And then lastly, we are still really trying to wrap our brains around and understand how the projects contained in the plan are going to get prioritized and what incremental improvements we are going to be able to see next year and the year after. So we're hoping and we'll be looking to the Metro Council to really work with the mayor's office to help everyone better understand the sequencing of projects contained in the plan, when investments will happen, when we'll see more staffing at these departments to go after this opportunistic funding to make these things happen, and how that all will be incorporated into next year's operating and capital budgets. So that's really all I had prepared for today. I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of the discussion. I don't know if Nora wanted to add anything else.
Nora, did you have anything else?
Nope, Lindsay, I think you covered it. Thank you for speaking, and we appreciate a chance to share today.
Okay, thanks. And remember, to all council members who are participating today, we do have a number of Metro departments with us as well that would be responsible for implementation elements. So now I am going to invite my co-facilitators for today. Since this is a joint committee, we do have 4 committees represented, and I will turn first to Bob Nash, who chairs our Public Works Committee. Councilmember Nash.
Thank you, Chairman O'Connell. I'm really here to listen. I did want to thank all the committee chairs for their cooperation and helping us find a date. When you have this many people involved, that can be an issue. And thank the mayor's office again for giving us a couple of viable dates and everybody working together. And I want to thank you too for bringing your expertise to this program and helping facilitate it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. Now we will turn to Quante Toon, who is our chair of the Budget and Finance Committee of Metro Council. Councilmember Toon.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councilman Nash, I'm here to listen, and I'm really interested in comments and conversations from other council members. But I know we keep hearing a lot of misunderstanding of the finances. When you hear a plan that's estimated to cost about $1 billion, folks want to know where that's coming from, and so I'd like to hear more from Ms. DeMassimo about fleshing out those numbers. My understanding is with the resolution that's before council is that we need that resolution in order to position ourselves to be eligible for certain state and federal funds. So I'd like to know, has the administration identified any potential grants and what's the estimated amount of those grants, and just walking us through the implementation timeline and what it's going to cost at each point. Because at some point it's going to cost the city something. So I think that it would be good for the listening audience as well as council members to know at what point is the city expected to pay some amount of money and what that amount of money is.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. I think that is an important question. We should go ahead and pause here and let Ms. DeMassimo or a representative of Metro Finance, if necessary, speak to that.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I needed to unmute. I will start, and then if there are other members of the administration that also wish to speak to this. So in the document, in the transportation plan document itself, Councilmember Toombs, we understood the situation that we are, that we find ourselves in. We recognize the need and necessity of the dedicated funding that you've heard several of the groups mention earlier today, so that major projects can proceed to implementation. And we recognize that in the appendix section of the plan, the section on funding strategies. That said, we equally appreciate the unprecedented times that Metro Nashville and certainly cities all across America have found themselves in. But for us in particular, over the past year, with the financial matters that council has addressed, the mayor's addressed, tornadoes, the pandemic, creating economic uncertainty for so many of our residents and businesses. And we believed that the right approach at this time was to take this opportunistic funding approach that relies upon the kinds of funding opportunities that are coming available. And you had said you would like to understand perhaps some of the opportunities. There are a couple, for example, that are coming up as early as February, right now, as we understand it, of next year. That there's one in particular that would help us with the downtown neighborhood traffic project. There's another that we have identified in that same sort of first quarter of the year timeframe that would be very well suited to the traffic management center. That is an important part of modernizing our whole traffic management center to be sort of the nerve center for operating all the traffic signals throughout Metro Nashville and improving our safety, the reliability of our system, and how traffic just flows from place to place. So those are a couple of examples. I know Steve Bland is on the phone, and I'm sure he can also, or on this call, this meeting, and he can also talk about some of the detailed transit opportunities, particularly that we see coming up. But what I wanted to say is where you will see, you're correct, that there will be commitments necessary of local funds in order to leverage and achieve that success in these funding opportunities. It's also about that partnership with GNRC that Michael Skipper spoke to earlier. But where you will see that is in the programming that we do first in the CIB, and then in the commitment, the actual programming of funding that takes place in the capital spending plan. So that's where and that's why the mayor underscores that it'll be within our existing resources. So it will be in that CIB, CSP activity that we undergo, and then making that prioritization and those commitments that are needed to advance projects that are partnership projects. But there's probably at least right now, at least a half a dozen or so funding partnership opportunities that we see coming up near term, so that the first half of next year, in addition to those other ones that I mentioned. And I'd like to ask if Steve Bland can talk a little bit about the transit opportunities and some of those ones that we already have sort of in the queue right now in particular, Steve, if you could mention a few of those.
Perfect. Sure. Thank you. And Steve, welcome and appreciate your being available.
Thank you, Councilman. Happy to be here. On the transit side, there's two distinct elements. So one is, and most of the council members are familiar with this, a significant chunk of the Better Bus program in particular, actual service enhancements, and those are largely going to be tied toward operating budget requests. So historically, over the last probably 3 or 4 years with council, when we've gone through the budget process, we've done what we refer to as a two-tiered budget request. One is that baseline budget to sustain current operations, and the other is a tier 2 request for what the enhancements would be. So, and frankly, you'd likely expect to see that in the next budget cycle, really trying to implement some of those early stage improvements identified in WEGO's Better Bus program and in the mayor's transportation plan as it might be ultimately adopted. On the capital side, to Faye's point, and actually also connecting to the comments that Michael made about GNRC, as we work very collaboratively with the administration, with GNRC, with TDOT, to try to sequence and connect projects that will meet a high level of the criteria that are identified for competitive sources. And a couple of examples that we have of those, you all recently took action on a couple of items relative to our pending North Nashville Transit Center. And that's been successful in obtaining discretionary Improve Act money through TDOT and through the state. We've previously secured what's referred to as Section 5339B money, competitive money through the Federal Transit Administration for fleet and bus facilities projects. We've worked successfully with Michael and with TDOT, with GNRC, to obtain federal congestion mitigation, air quality management funds for some of the projects that can help to mitigate traffic and emission standards. And actually have been successful in getting some of our other federal surface transportation monies flexed over to projects like the project that we have ongoing now to upgrade stops and shelters in the Nolensville Pike Corridor. So when Ms. DeMassimo talks about opportunistic funding, it's about everybody kind of getting together, the alphabet soup getting together, identifying sequences of projects, particularly that work well together, and then looking at that broad variety of sources, federal, state, and local, that can help to deliver projects in a timely manner.
One other thing, Councilmember Toombs, I wanted to add to what Steve just said is one of the places that we have an opportunity to dramatically increase our competitiveness. I talked about the CIB and the CSP and the role that those things play. The other part that where those can be particularly influential in making us more competitive with the federal and state opportunities that are out there is in getting projects that are designed and what I think the incoming administration is now referring to as shovel-worthy. We have a lot of projects that we've talked about this, and we've tried to certainly leverage that in the preparation of this plan. A lot of good work that's been done and a lot of project ideas that are there. We need to get those projects designed so that they are ready to compete effectively for those funding opportunities, those partnership funding opportunities. I think on the transit side, Steve has done a really good job of that. WEGO's done a really good job of that. We need on the transportation side of Metro, all of the other supporting multimodal infrastructure. We can do a lot better there, but this very sort of intentional process of having a plan that outlines what we're going to do that can work with the regional process at the MPO with Michael Skipper and the GNRC and others, with our community partners, but a plan that outlines that then we can begin to program against and we can get projects designed and ready to compete effectively is just a recipe for success. And you can see that in other communities across America that have done the same sort of thing. And it will be a remarkable leveraging point for us. So thank you for the question.
Hey, Steve, thank you. Councilmember Toombs, did you have other follow-ups on that point?
Just one. So you mentioned the CIB and the capital improvements budget, and that usually plans out about five years or so. Do you anticipate having all of the pieces in the in this upcoming CIB, or are you thinking that you're going to need more time and this is actually a longer project than 5 years?
This plan, as we anticipate it right now, council member, is roughly a 10 to 12-year plan. So I would anticipate that with it moving forward in this continued opportunistic funding strategy method that or approach, that it would in fact span over more than one CIB or typical time frame for those.
Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Murphy, Chair of the Planning, Zoning, and Historical Committee, is our final co-facilitator, and I will turn to her, and then we will open up the floor. I will do my best to get to people in the order that I see hands in WebEx, but for now, Councilmember Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Councilman O'Connell. This has been, I appreciate you taking lead on this and your commitment to transit over the years. I think being in my second term, I'm definitely looking at this transit plan much different than we did in our first term, and when Mayor Berry at the time rolled out her transit plan and the transit referendum. And I just want to pause there and say her transit plan and the transit referendum, and now we're talking about Mayor Cooper's transit plan. And at some point, we do need to get to where it is Nashville's transit plan and not a plan that is changing every election cycle, and where neighborhoods and investors and property owners and council members have to continue to fight to prioritize their projects and needs of their communities. While those needs change over time, they are pretty consistent and should reflect that in each plan. And so I have a variety of questions. I had hoped that the mayor's office would have provided more detail today rather than being basically a repetition of comments heard before by myself and other council members, of a very bird's eye view of what is a very thick and important document. Again, if we are planning for a plan that's 10, 12 years long, that changes things, because it is a lot of money and a lot of projects. That is a very long time to get them done. So some of my questions I'm going to throw out there, but I want to also say I don't expect them to be answered now, because we do have only 2 hours, and we have there's a lot of us that need to get our discussion out, because this really truly is our first opportunity to discuss this as a council. So I'm going to throw these questions out. I would like them to be touched upon by the administration, but I do not expect them to go into detail, and I can forward my questions in to them, and then I'm happy to share the answers back with the council. So one of my concerns about this is that it looks like there's only $7 million programmed for capital improvements on 2 of Nashville's highest ridership corridors, Charlotte and Gallatin. The Let's Move Nashville program had proposed $697 million in capital improvement for Charlotte and $789 million for capital improvement on Gallatin. Charlotte is one of the only of 2 transit corridors that have been upzoned to allow for increased density during the last recession. I would like to know how much of the breakout of the $7 million will be allocated to each corridor. Is it an equal amount of 3.5 to each? What will that go for? How far down each corridor will improvements be constructed? How did you arrive at that figure for 2 of the highest riderships? Heavily congested and unsafe and rapidly densifying corridors. Of course, I think we all feel like all of our corridors are important and congested and unsafe, but I would like to have seen more detail about that plan and some sort of PowerPoint today, rather than just the same kind of elevator speech. I'd also like to know about some sort of graph or track of our track record of success in pursuing opportunistic funding opportunities. and the lack of it's my understanding that because we don't have dedicated funding sources for transit, and let's be honest, to have a dedicated funding source, we're going to have to use some sort of the Improvement Act and taxing mechanism. But so without having that, I think it's my understanding that that is a knock against Nashville in qualifying for highly competitive federal grant programs, where like Indianapolis or Charlotte do have dedicated funding programs and would be a much more stronger candidate to get that. And so my concern is that we can talk about opportunistic funding all day long, but until we have dedicated funding and put skin in the game for ourselves, I think opportunistic funding appears to be smoke and mirrors. I guess we'll see what happens with the capital improvements plan and see if we will be putting any skin in that game. I'm also concerned that we are voting on a transit plan, and we have a transit plan being formulated while we don't have a permanent, or no director is permanent, but we do not have a public works director. That traffic and transit issues are currently housed under that department. As many of the other council members know, I filed an amendment, and the mayor's office has said that they are not opposed to it to direct them or direct us to put a referendum on the ballot to have a transit department, a Department of Transportation as part of Metro in the near future. Because again, how can we really discuss and have a future vision when we don't have someone who is going to be implementing that right now? Again, I'm very concerned about the budget numbers here. Walk and bike plan identified that it would take $460 million to build Nashville's priority sidewalk network and $235 million to repair existing sidewalks. Yet this plan only has $200 million dedicated for sidewalks, about the same percentage as the proposed total program as the park cap at I-40 at Jefferson Street. It would be nice to know how this was calculated out. I just don't, those numbers just don't add up to me. And maybe that's, maybe I didn't carry a 2, or maybe I carried over a 2 that I shouldn't have. But at the end of the day, when I've seen sidewalk numbers and really the implementation of all this, it's taken 5 years to get one sidewalk done in my district. I don't see any of this happening in the estimated time or with the estimated money. And then one last thing to touch on, and then I promise Councilman O'Connell I'll give it back to you and whoever wants to speak, and then I'll turn off my mic. Again, talking about dollar amounts. The 2019 capital spending plan allocated $30 million towards the public works paving program and $12 million towards the sidewalk repair. Over what period of time is this $2 million is going to be proposed and implemented? Again, you've said 10 to 12 years. That's a very long time to be talking about with this. This plan is going to be aged and dated by 10 years. We're going to be in a totally different Nashville by then. I would like to know more of a specific timeline on these projects and ideas. Also, the administration has said to us, I think in writing, that this plan could be amended by a vote of the council at any time, projects in, projects out. I'd like to know a little bit more about what that looks like, because right now what's before us is what has been told to us is a memorializing resolution, but it has an attached document that we are voting on that is pretty heavy and has, I think, some typos in it. And it has some, for example, on my project list, it has projects that are not near my district on it. And so my concern is that this may not be a living, breathing document the way that it could be. So I know, I touched on a lot of different things. I will email my questions into Ms. DeMassimo in the mayor's office, but if y'all could address some of that for the greater council, and what is the possibility of y'all doing some sort of public presentation that really goes into the details of this plan, not just for the council, but for the general public to know what we are talking about and committing Nashville to. Thank you.
Councilmember Murphy, thank you so much. And maybe, can I suggest, would you mind, we've done this in similar fashion previously, feel free to absolutely send those directly to the administration, but if you wouldn't mind sending them to the council office as well, so we can kind of compile, sort of a full list of Q&A that we can submit back to council members before Tuesday's meeting and potential vote on this.
I would be happy to. I think that's a great idea. Chair O'Connell, who in our office is going to be coordinating that? Who do you think we should be funneling those through?
I'm going to suggest John Cooper, just because I know that he has done it before in scenarios like before we had sort of the weekly COVID-19 call set up and a few other things. But I'll tell you what, I will work with John and Rosie in our office after this meeting to confirm that, and then we will go forward from there and make sure that both the administration and council office receive all the questions and have time to kind of consolidate answers before the Tuesday council meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Great. And Mr. Massimo, did you want to respond to any of Councilmember Murphy's inquiries and concerns?
Perhaps in the interest of time, I won't go into all of them. There's a couple of things I think I would mention. On the question regarding Charlotte and Gallatin, that $7 million is included in there based upon our experience with doing some of the design work in other similar kinds of corridors in terms of upgrading either current designs that are already there or looking at how innovation can be brought into those corridors. That is not the total capital cost. That is a part of the capital cost. Remember, we talked about earlier about the importance of getting projects designed and ready to compete for other dollars. And what that does not, the capital transit investment, which is I think what you were referring to from the earlier plan, is showing up on the transit on the part that Steve Bland was referring to. So we can combine those numbers for you so that you can see what the total proposed capital investment is for this plan. In both Charlotte and Gallatin that you were asking about. I think that just having had a lot of success over my career in doing sort of opportunistic funding strategies, both with and without dedicated funding, I probably have a little more confidence in it, but I can certainly understand why there would be questions about that. We look forward to answering those, as well as some of the questions around the staffing and the sidewalk number. Last thing I think I would mention something specifically to, and we're glad to revisit that. But the number for sidewalks and the completion of 80% of the backlog was a number that we got that was directly developed by Public Works. So, but we can revisit those numbers with them and relook at that to explain it to you better. So look forward to your questions, Council Member. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Faye. Thank you, Councilmember Murphy. And I've got, just so everybody knows where the queue is, I've got Councilmember Henderson and then Councilmember Hurt. And I just saw Councilmembers Mendez and Withers, so we'll go in that order. So Councilmember Henderson, feel free to jump in. Oh, unless she dropped from the call. I just saw, oh no, there she is. Councilmember Henderson, you are still muted. I don't know if it's possible for you to unmute yourself here.
I'm sorry, thank you. Thank you.
There we go.
Headset difficulty there. Mr. Massimo, I think I just wanted to segue out of your last comment or response to Council Lady Murphy about the sidewalk backlog, and that is a provided number from Public Works, which I would anticipate just through our multiple administration changes, our implementation problems. These are projects that have been identified, and my assumption would be as having merit, having had some percentage of engineering done, are kind of on the radar screen of Public Works. Past council members, current ones, anticipated that they would be done by now. So I assume your backlog is referring to that. So as such, then are you saying that 80% of the backlog can be achieved within the life of the plan? Or are we talking about the priority network as defined in the Walk and Bike Strategic Plan? So while I appreciate that, you have been looking to the in-motion strategic plan, the plan to play master plan, the walk and bike, and a lot of that good work that's been previously done. I do want to make sure, to Council Lady Murphy's point, and for the community to understand, I want us to be speaking kind of the same language. So, the language of the walk and bike strategic plan is, the priority network. And that those, through various algorithms and double checks by council members, what was initially 90 some odd miles of sidewalk and is now somewhere in the 70 range. Can you speak to that more specifically and the cost of that and what the plan will put toward that?
So we've got $200 million budgeted for sidewalks.
Is that for 10 to 12 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And that is drawing upon what is currently in the walk and bike plan and is currently, as the sidewalk prioritization is held by Public Works. So we did not change those things, with the understanding that the walk and bike plan is due for an update this next year, and that the prioritization methodology that's currently used now would be something that we would have an opportunity to revisit, but revisit in a very community-driven sense, a very council-driven sense. So we didn't attempt to change things like that were known as a part of this plan, because we knew there were already expectations and commitments and those kinds of things made around it. I will say that most of those projects, I know you referenced some level of design. I would tell you that overall, there's a pretty minimal level of any design effort that's been undertaken. We do have some, but there's still an effort to go there. And part of our process here is to, which council member I know you've been involved in, is to be able to improve our delivery. Both in terms of, and I think Councilmember Murphy mentioned this as well, the length of time that you often wait for sidewalk commitments to actually get built and be in place so that the community can use them, and then what the cost of those has typically been per linear foot or per mile or whatever. And we are currently working on process improvements for both of those things, and therefore expect the funding commitment in this plan to be able to go further, and will be able to match the effort of updating the walk and bike plan, as well as updating a sidewalk prioritization process over the coming year.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just by way of follow-up, I think, the $20 million per year has been, somewhat of a consistent number over the last few years, with the understanding from Public Works that, pipeline-wise, that needed to be a consistent number for staffing and program management. Obviously, through multiple administrations, intention within Public Works to improve process has been faltering, to say the least. And so I really do remain concerned. I share the same concerns that Walk Bike Nashville has, that Council Lady Murphy expressed. A plan is just a plan unless you can actually implement it. And so I worry a little bit that I think what we heard from the community, particular to the last kind of go big, go home, a lot of light rail kind of plan, was that people really wanted fundamentals first. You all have positioned this as a better bus plan, and I appreciate that. Shorter headways, more buses running, more shelters. You can't take the bus unless you can walk to the bus. Really traffic calming at the neighborhood level, scaling that out across the city. But what that means, I worry a little bit that we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouths, in that, the kind of the historical model of cities chasing federal dollars, right? So there's Tiger grants, and there's this, and we're going to do this light rail corridor to, respond or get this federal money. And I know, at the federal and state level, I really would like to see more funding around kind of fundamentals. And I think hopefully in this next administration that will change. But that said, I I am concerned that in an opportunistic posture, if we do not get the fundamental kind of org chart, process management, appropriate staffing, Councilor Murphy was speaking to that in the transportation space, program management space. Public Works and planning have been underfunded and understaffed for years. They have been limping along, doing the best that they can to keep their head above water. We are overusing, in my view, contractors to do what is basic bread and butter stuff. And so I wonder, you said that in your starting remarks that you were exploring a DOT or an Office of Mobility and Infrastructure. You responded to Walk and Bike Nashville last week that you're kind of planning to plan a DOT. I wonder if you can speak more to that, because those of us who have been on council for 5 years really look to a lack of good process management, internal organizational excellence to deliver all of this. And so I just wonder if you can speak to that, please.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you asked that question, council member. It's an important one, and I think we've done a lot of very thoughtful work around that, so I'm glad to get an opportunity to share it. So over the last about 6 months or so, and I see that Shanna Whitelaw is a participant on this call as well. As the interim director of Public Works, she and I have been working together on an organizational assessment of our current transportation activities within Public Works. And we are nearing completion of that. I think that we expect probably to have some recommendations ready to go within the next maybe 30 to 60 days, somewhere around that sort of time frame.
And just quickly, recommendations to whom and for what?
It would be a recommendation to the mayor, and it would be around what does a Department of Mobility and Infrastructure or Department of Transportation, whatever we want to call it, what does that look like and how does it function?
And then as well, okay. Apologize, a little bit of lag. Where there'll also be recommendations. I think my concern, Mr. Massimo, comes in, there's always this thing we're going to do out in the future. The DOT, right. The office, it's always out on the horizon. And what I'm not seeing is stuff happening today. How are we managing our bikeways? How are we managing our traffic calming? Why don't we have 2 people staffed to do that? Why are we so I want to understand on the timeline, in addition to the recommendations, within what time frame, beginning as we intend to go, what are we doing now that could achieve that in the future? Can you speak more to kind of that near term as well?
Sure. I'll talk about some of the things that we're doing right now. So as an example, and this might not sound very exciting to some of the members of the call, but it's one of those, you talked about bread and butter kinds of things, fundamentals. We haven't had a construction management manual. Those are fundamental tools within most departments of transportation and most transportation units. Even of a Public Works department, we really didn't have one. We have just recently completed our construction management manual for Metro Nashville, and that governs how we take a project from concept all the way through construction, how all of the business processes that go along with that, the engineering processes that go along with that, the coordination effort that goes along with that, and we've been a very in-depth product that we've worked on as a collective team between the mayor's office and the staff in the departments. So we are actually finalizing it right now, but we expect to have that as a product. And what we want to do with that then is do a training for our staff, as well as a training for contractors and consultants that work with us as a part of that delivery team, so that we all are operating on the same expectations. I know Councilmember Henderson, you've heard me before use the term sharpest pencils, sharpest minds when you come to work with us for the consultants and contractors that are an extended part of our team. And in fact, we have done exactly that in terms of some of the improvements that we've made to the A&E contract improvement process, but not only just to the process itself, but the follow-ups that we've been doing. And it's not just been with the departments doing that, because this is so important. to this administration, the mayor's office has been directly involved in the conversations to reset expectations of what our performance expectations are. Again, we want best solutions and best prices for Metro Nashville and for our constituents. And so we've been making sure to work on that. They all know that the construction management manual completion is done. And as a part of that, I was mentioning rolling that in internally. We want to do some certified project manager training for our own staff, internal stuff, but to get people to a common level of practice so that we don't have, certain kinds of ways of delivering projects over here and other ways over here, but to bring us all up to a common standard.
And I appreciate that, Faye. Could you just then articulate, we don't have a sufficient org chart to do that work at present. And so, I know we've had kind of the contractors that we have, to manage various programs. And I think, you can see a varying level of excellence. So, the culverts and small bridges program, excellently managed, right? Managed by a contractor, but that's a level of well communicated to council, well communicated to the community, clear what the goals are, and I have remained concerned that we cannot bring that same level of professional excellence to our department, and that's because they're under resourced. You can't have one person doing a traffic calming program. You can't have one person managing, all the capital sidewalks projects. We don't have a safe crossing program. So I want to understand from an org chart perspective. So I appreciate the construction manual vis-a-vis the contractors.
The work that I mentioned that Ms. Whitelaw and I have been doing, there will be, as a part of that recommendation around the Department of Transportation, there will be an org chart that will help us come along with that recommendation, that will also help us to articulate those resourcing needs, both in terms of expertise and numbers of folks and levels of resourcing commitments and so forth. So that will be a part of it that then will become a part of.
For this next budget cycle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so increasing the staffing in planning and public works.
Well, we'll wait until we bring that organizational chart forward, and then we will discuss those specifics at that time, I think.
Okay, and that org chart will be a part of the proposal that you and Shannon will make to the mayor by the end of this year?
Within the next, I would say, like I said, 30 days or so, 30, 45, 60 days, somewhere in that time frame. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. And again, if anyone has follow-ups that they'd like to submit, I think I'm going to try to see if we can get back through this video and record some of the questions that came up here as well. I had Councilmember Hurt next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly appreciate you hosting and all of the other committees hosting this meeting. The thing I want to say is similar to Councilmember Murphy and Henderson's on that same line of thought. Prior to me being on the council, I served on several transportation committees locally, regionally, and traveled the nation looking at other systems. And they were the people's systems, those that were successful. So I agree that this needs to be Nashville's plan and not any particular mayor's plan. And being that it's Nashville's plan, to that point, there was some strong opposition to previous plans, but I think that overall, the city of Nashville knows that we need upgraded transportation. So I would like to know, did you all evaluate why the previous plans did not work? What did you do differently, and what are you doing differently now? And those who did oppose, what role did they play in your plan? Because I think it's very key for you to not repeat some of the ways and messaging that the previous administration used, because it was unsuccessful, and we want something that is going to be successful. Thank you.
Sure. Councilmember Hurt, thank you for the question. So a couple of things. I'm sure that there are some differing opinions about what went amiss with the previous transit referendum that failed, and that referred to as a plan from the previous administration. I'm sure that there are several opinions about that. And there certainly was a lot of national attention and focus to it, and autopsies that were done on it and so forth. I will tell you the things that I learned from reading all of that history, and also from what I heard over the course of the months that we spent out in the community, talking into the thousands of folks in the 11 community listening sessions and in the 3 dozen or so stakeholder listening sessions. There was a strong feeling that it was so big and so much that you couldn't quite get your arms around it and understand it and understand what it was going to do for you. And it was a lot. It was big. And that big didn't necessarily translate into making a difference in my life, making a difference in a person's life. So we certainly heard, and I think that was one of the reasons why, this notion of a right-sized plan was something that we responded to. That was how we chose to respond to hearing about that, was trying to come up with a right-sized plan. And what did right-size mean? That meant a plan that was large enough to be impactful, and serve our community, and at the same time was one we could get our arms around, understand, and we could execute against. So I would tell you that was one of the lessons learned. The other thing was that we heard way more than once that there were lots of parts of the community that didn't feel like that they shared in the benefits of what the previous plan was proposing, that the projects were focused in areas that didn't really benefit them. We were very purposeful and deliberate about making sure that, I know one of our listening sessions, for example, was in an area where when we went there, they said, nobody really ever comes up here to meet with us. And so we were very, very pleased that people were seeing us touch places where they didn't feel like they'd been touched. But we were particularly proud when we decided to truth ourselves and say, well, how well did we do at looking at all of the needs that we heard, and we were listening. We didn't go in and say, here's a plan, what do you think? We went in and we said, what do you think? And we're going to just listen to you. And then we'll figure out how we take all this great work that's been doing and make it into a new plan. But what we heard was that people didn't see things in their communities and see things that benefited them. So we decided to truth ourselves, and we asked the planning department to do a GIS analysis of the plan and tell us, when you look at the 1,900, and I think it's 61 projects, if I got that number wrong, somebody please don't quote me on that, but I think that's right. In all throughout Metro Nashville, how well did we do at reaching our population and our employment? Because what we want to do is create that opportunity for people to be able to get to the places that they need to go, schools, employment, healthcare, so that they can have successful lives. And what we found was that 92% of the residents and 94% of the employment was within a half mile of an improvement. Now, that could be anything from a culvert to a transit stop to a sidewalk to a traffic signal. It could be all of those things. But it was clear that our intention, learned from those past efforts to make sure that we were paying attention to all of Metro Nashville, that we had really done it. And so from that perspective, I can tell you, so those are a couple of lessons learned where we paid attention to the history that we have here, both in the right sizing, in the making sure that we're touching everyone, and also in making sure that there are all kinds of different improvements in here, whether it's transit and strong on transit, because we know that there's a lot of support there, but there's also sidewalks and there's also traffic management. We're also improving safety for everyone, so that we're making sure that those equity considerations, how do you really achieve great equity? Again, that equity and design assessment tool is a strong one, but I think that this is an even more profound demonstration of the kind of equity of community that we heard was an issue in previous efforts. But I thank you so much for that question.
Thank you very much. And I would also like to speak to the fact that there are some fundamental things that that we need to address that concern me. And each time I have concerns, I will reach out to Mr. Bland, who's very responsive. But I also mentioned to you, I think about some other resources where GIS studies have been done, and that's one thing Nashville is good for, is studying. They do a tremendous amount of studies, and I'm not sure that they really utilize those studies. They just do them over and over and over again. But Dr. David Padgett at Tennessee State University, I think I mentioned to you, had done a GIS study for our bus systems. And I think that we should utilize those resources that are already out there and not spend more time and money in reinventing the wheel, knowing that it has been. So I do know that we need a new transportation plan, but it's only as good as it's able to be implemented, as Councilmember Henderson said, and we want something that can be implemented. So thank you very much.
Completely agree. Thank you for those comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Hurt. I do want to pause before moving on to the rest of my queue. I did see Mr. Jamison's hand up. Mike, did you want to jump in?
Thank you so much, Chair. Just a few quick reassurances to the council. I've served on the council in the past and can share the frustration that members have had when an outside consultant is hired on a major proposal, and then the plan is unleashed, and then the consultant disappears. And I know the council members know this, but I think it's worth just reiterating that Faye is not going anywhere. And the level of expertise, I know she's blushing and is probably hating every second of this, but the level of expertise she brings in implementing transportation plans, she's been doing this for 40 years. And the last half dozen of those years, she was the director in Atlanta. She's going to be here to guide us through the execution of the plan and the creation of the DOT, the necessary capital spending plan inclusions, and so forth. This is not someone who's disappearing on the council tomorrow. Two other quick things, Council Chairman, if I can. Council members will remember the press release from back in July with the announcing that the recommendations were due to the mayor at the end of this month for the creation of the DOT. That and all of the organizational and programming problems that we have recognized and seen in various departments, staff has been working on for months, and those are coming to the mayor at the end of this month, and that has not been forgotten. Just those 2 quick points, Chair. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Next, I had Councilmember Mendoza.
Thanks, Councilmember O'Connell. I appreciate those comments by Mr. Jamison, although I would point out that it would be a rare public servant to hold a position for 10 to 12 years. And so it is, while it's comforting that Faye isn't going anywhere immediately, to the point some previous council members made, this has to be robust enough to withstand changes in any position because it's highly unlikely that any of us hold our current positions in a decade or 12 years from now. I wanted to respond to that real quickly, but my broader point is really just to make a couple of comments. I do appreciate the comments is around how this is packaged and described for the public. I do appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I do appreciate the clarification in the legislation that this plan does not approve any spending whatsoever. But of course, that leads to Councilmember Toombs's kind of questions about if this doesn't approve any spending, when do we approve spending? When will we be asked to approve spending? How much will that be? What will the sequencing of projects be? What will be the sequencing of spending? And my comment is that rather than the, frankly, very long-winded description of how we're going to act opportunistically, I would prefer, and I think it would be more direct for the public, if the description involved basically saying, we don't know and we can't say right now, to specific questions about how much will Metro look to spend in capital and operating and when, the opportunistic answer should involve like we don't know. No commitments are being made at all on that is what I'm hearing in the plan, similar to the sequencing of projects questions, which naturally there's a lot of fair questions about that. I think it'd be better off to involve a more direct, we don't know what the sequencing of projects is going to be. Now, some people will like this sort of directness because it means no spending in the near future. Some people will not like this because it would confirm that the plan is an outline really only and not a specific commitment to any amount at any time for any project. And so whether you like it or don't like it, I think it's a more direct answer rather than lengthy descriptions about all the ways to be opportunistic in going about this. And again, I'm not stating a position about whether it's good or bad, but for what we're being asked to do, I think I would encourage the administration to more directly include a description that when it comes to sequencing or what are we going to spend and when, like nothing's being proposed. We don't know, can't say at this point. That's for a later time. And I don't necessarily need the administration to respond. I just wanted to share that point, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Mendoza. If the administration would like to respond, certainly welcome to. I don't know if Faye or Mike want to respond at all to that, but happy to move on if not. Okay, not hearing anything there. I've got Councilmember Withers next.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thanks so much, Mr. Massimo, for taking time today to speak with us again. There are, I guess, one thing that I know we're going to have a lot of interest in, and it's not touched upon in a great deal, and I don't know that we need to today, but there is touched upon in the plan a component of affordable housing investment. And I know that today's not the day to do that, but I know that with the last plan, a lot of discussion happened around affordable housing. And in some quarters, I think a lot of people who typically are advocates of transit and transportation and the jobs that go with that and the services that are provided, there was a concern about transportation infrastructure spending leading to gentrification. And so that is a concern in our community. And we don't have to address that today, but just want to say that I think that's something that you and your team might want to continue to flesh out a little bit more in the future as we move along. But one of the things that I spent a lot of time with reading the document, it's not my expertise, but is the appendix on the Nashville Mobility Management Center. And I really thought it was very, very helpful. I think a lot of people, I work with the Signal shop and call down about this, that, and the other's not working, or we send things into Hub Nashville. And we get, I think, pretty good response. But that appendix, I want to give praise to it, is that it was so detailed in explaining how the equipment that we have does or doesn't work, what the different options are. I thought it was really, really detailed and very rich. And so I want to give praise to that appendix. And one of the things, too, to kind of go back to some of the things that Councilmember Murphy and Councilmember Henderson talked about, one of the things I really appreciate about it as well is that it provides an outline of, like, when we look at other cities and how many signals or how many of these different things that they work with, what's the staffing ratio per the number of those pieces of equipment? And I think that portion, particularly the staffing portion of that appendix, is very rich and very helpful to us. I think ultimately, we know that we're not committing to any spending today, but putting on my hat as a ranking member of the Personnel Committee Chair, I think that not only are we going to want to hear in our budget how we're going to get to an appropriate or even just feasible staffing level again, for more than one person dealing with bikeways, more than one person being a sidewalk project coordinator, more than one person doing neighborhood traffic studies. We know we're gonna need more than that. So obviously we're gonna be looking for that probably in the upcoming operating budget. But just some of the other, if you phased it out over 3 or 4 years, I know these are examples only, but how many traffic engineers, how many signal techs do we need? How many of the, how many cell phone plans do we need? I think that kind of information is really, really helpful. Like I said, that's not my expertise at all from the tech side, but from the personnel staffing side, I think that's really helpful to us in figuring out what this is going to cost, how we're going to need to phase it in, not just from the capital side and the infrastructure side, but specifically from the operating budget side and the personnel side. So I think that for myself, I'm going to be looking very closely at the operating budget that comes and what those staffing profiles look like this year in particular. And hopefully for a couple of years. We have to start sometime. It's probably going to be this year. I do want to caution my colleagues that, when we talk about staffing resources, that typically means that we're not going to get additional staff resources, particularly not in-house, if we have a status quo budget. So we may need to be looking at a budget that adds positions, and that adds more cost this year. So if we're going to deliver those solutions, we're going to need to have the staffing to do it, which we've all agreed to, and that may translate into a budget that is more, an operating budget that is more than a status quo budget. So that really is it. I just wanted to throw that out there, that I really thought that particular appendix was really, really helpful and informative to me. Would encourage others to take a look at it as well. And I look forward to the discussion that comes up when the mayor presents the operating budget in a couple of months. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm really glad you brought that up too, because and the reason we focused on that in detail, and I'm glad you spent so much time with it, was our traffic management and traffic operations and modernizing that is key to everything. Because traffic management is how you move pedestrians, it's how you move scooters, it's how you move bikes, it's how you move cars and transit vehicles, it's how you move everything. And the notion that really has to be improved and brought up to a level. And I think that the recommendations that are in that appendix with that more in-depth look we did at that, understanding the critical nature of it, are ones that we are drawing directly from in terms of the recommendations that we would be making towards a future Department of Transportation. So just know that all those things are linking together. And then to really quickly to your earlier comment on affordable housing, as you know, what we did was we paired 2 of the higher capacity transit projects in the plan with an upgraded investment that's dedicated to affordable housing, so that those things would work together. The details of those kinds of things, I know we're all eager for a lot of details, but we've got to get projects designed and fleshed out, and we just don't have all of that oftentimes yet to the level of detail needed to do it, but we're going to get there. So, and one other quick thing I wanted to point out, and this is my bad, I should have done it at the beginning. I think Councilmember Murphy actually talked about a more in-depth overview. Page 9 of the document for I know you all actually have a hard copy of the document now, is a project highlights. I know that there's going to be an eagerness to go into some more discussion on each of these and the funding strategies for each of those, but I wanted to point out that there is an actual overview of both the transit and then the traffic multimodal safety side of our portfolios that talks about what's actually in this plan and how will we get it done. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I have Councilmember Nash back up.
Thank you. I guess I'm the new kid on the block when it comes to transportation. The majority of my experience amounts to me walking down my driveway, getting in my car, and going wherever I'm going to go, and maybe a little bit of walk around the Alton Ag Center. But I would like to pull out a couple of cliches. I hope we don't get where we make the perfect the enemy of the good. And to pull out a patent cliche, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. I think what we did see with the attempt to have the major referendum on this big plan, I can tell you the folks out of my neighborhood kind of thought it was grandiose, and for most of them, they weren't taking the bus. So this is what I'm doing for something else. I look at this plan, I see real projects, practical projects that will affect my neighborhoods. When we talk about traffic calming, when we talk about paying attention to sidewalks, as part of this big plan, I think it's something that is measured and small and gets us started. I trust this mayor. I trust Mr. Massimo will orchestra. There's a lot of moving parts here. A lot of, and this is a big orchestra that she's got to conduct. And I trust this administration will do that. But I think it's important that we start out with small, manageable, shovel-ready projects. And once people begin to see the improvements in a new transportation hub, or gee, we have a real place I can stand out and wait for the bus and be sheltered from the rain. When we see some of that happening, we start to build momentum, and we might come up with some more support for funding later on. I know when I ran for council and meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, they thought it was very important that we have dedicated funding for transportation. I know like Nashville does. And I said, we don't have dedicated funding for the police department where I came from. We don't have dedicated funding for the fire department, public works. It's part of making transportation one of our priorities. And so I hope we've talked about properly staffing public works. That is, and Councilman Withers hit the nail on the head. This is money we're talking about. And I don't know that, over the last few years, the council wasn't ready to fund. They were pretty much status quo and hang on for dear life until we got hit with the pandemic. And then all of a sudden we had to make some big decisions. So I hope as we move forward, I have some worries about how much the recovery will allow us to fund big projects here for maybe the next year. But as we find our economy coming back up, then we can begin to look at greater projects. And then hopefully as we get really back on the path that Nashville was on, we can look at more long-term and more dedicated funding possibly. But I think we need to be careful that we don't let this want too much of it right away.
Thank you, Councilmember Nash. Councilmember Hurt, I've got your hand. I wasn't sure if that was still up from previous.
I apologize. It is. I'm sorry.
No worries. That is all I have in the queue. I did have a couple of questions myself, but I wanted to give everybody else an opportunity beforehand. Is there any council member seeking recognition that I have not gotten to yet? All right, seeing nobody, I will ask just a couple brief questions of the administration. So I know, and I don't know if this is more appropriately directed at WeGo or possibly at the administration. So obviously so much of calendar year 2020 and kind of splitting across fiscal years 2020 and 2021 has had a lot to do with the impact of COVID on local economies, local behaviors, and certainly local fiscal impact. As we put together the FY21 operating budget, there was a pretty dramatic reduction in the operating subsidy for WeGo as a result of COVID-related federal funding. I'm curious to know, without maybe too soon to say, but that's going to be a significant kind of putting more money back in just to get us back up to status quo, plus more on top of that in order to advance on the better bus concept. Has the administration already looked at kind of what the FY22 scenario for WeGo would look like, once we're sort of using this plan as the kind of guiding principle?
we've been working in close coordination with WeGo through the budget process, and I think Monday we've got a further discussion on your budgetary matters. Isn't that correct, Steve?
Yeah, that's correct. We have a meeting with the Metro Finance and the Mayor's Office for a mid-year budget review. And then we'll have the current projections, Mr. Chair, of CARES Act availability. But your point is absolutely correct.
Okay. I mean, so I guess it's a combined point in question, right? That in order to advance any of the operating, we would have to first recover the portion of the operating budget that was reduced significantly for FY21, get that to status quo, and then make additional investments on top of that. So I just, it's something we will need to be attentive to as we go through this year's operating budget process. There's a nearby, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, if I might just jump on another item that, and you'll appreciate this because of your prior role, another item that the MTA board will be looking at is post-pandemic, what we've seen in ridership patterns is we anticipate some markets are going to come back more quickly than others. So one of the conversations the MTA board's been engaging in is as we restore service levels, as we get budget back, what's the proper order? And as a good example of that, what we found is one of the key tenets of N-Motion that's reflected in Better Bus, that's reflected in the pending city transportation plan, is kind of building out a better all-day bus network. And what we found is the ridership decline in the midday and the evening has been much lower during the pandemic than what we've seen on commuter and peak hour services. So even in the midterm, and even in the short term, because it may take a while for those office commuters to migrate back, do we reallocate? So those are some of the conversations that are going on simultaneously with the budget conversation.
Great. Thank you, Steve. That is an important, similarly to all the things that you see every day, those ridership figures also impacted. So a nearby follow-up question. I know I'm not the only council member who has had some concerns about the frozen capital dollars for already appropriated projects. Many of us, and I've got some specific projects in mind in District 19, are still waiting on things that seem like high impact, would have been high impact in calendar year 2020, will still probably be high impact in calendar year 2021 as we wait for the pandemic to recede with the availability of a vaccine, the possibility of additional federal relief. Are we getting anywhere closer to the point where we might see high impact, low cost, active transportation projects finally get capitalized?
I mean, I certainly hope so, Councilmember. I just don't think that we are, it's likely going to be in February per the earlier memo that was, I think, referenced earlier. So it's still likely to be February, but it's certainly something that we're very mindful of and are working on and understand the commitment behind your requests and others' requests in that regard.
Okay. And I see Councilmember Henderson's hand back up. Is that a new question, Councilmember?
It is, Councilman O'Connell, and it is somewhat of a follow-on for your question you just now posed. So if I could just kind of insert this question and then you can return to yours. So particular to bikeways investment, and Faye, when we spoke about the first draft of the plan, that's something that I thought over the full life of the plan, in my view, was maybe not sufficient. I could see how, your math might work out that over the 10 to 12 year life of the plan, that might build out the prioritized network. But to Councilman O'Connell's point about kind of growing utility and engagement and use of folks like myself and kids and older people, building that network and how important that is. And the Walk and Bike Strategic Plan called that out very specifically. All consultants, did that core bikeable network and certain routes, which builds on Councilman O'Connell's point. So I guess, when I look at this plan and I see, okay, well, it's a 10 to 12 year arc, and you're making certain commitments of investments in each year. But as far as kind of a return on investment, I want to point out that there are, in my view, bikeways, if you make a more intense development, right, and kind of do that with intention in a core network, build out those spines, then you're growing utility, you're growing engagement. So kind of, front loading versus spreading stuff out. I find that to be true sometimes in our sidewalk investment as well. Got to do one here and one here and one here and one there. And we certainly want to be equitable, but, strategically aligning our sidewalk investments so they support the transit ridership. So, I know that we've tried to kind of work that into our CIB and our CSP and our planning, but can you speak to on those bikeway investments that Councilman O'Connell is speaking to? What is an administration is your take on that? Because I think bikeways, greenways, neighborways, all of that, I think as a city and other communities, we see kind of like, the bike lane backlash. I would assert that's because we go in one particular place and we do this and we fight a big fight about that. But when you talk to folks who don't bike now or might like to, or bike to school or bike to parks or, just connecting communities, it has such a high return on investment if we can do a really good, safe network. And so I wanted to hear from you this administration's commitment in that regard, potentially to front load the capital investments in that space. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if we're to the point of making the decisions about front loading at this point until we get some agreement and we determine whether the Metro plan is endorsed and so forth. But I will say this, I think the plan is ample evidence of the administration's commitment to a true multimodal system, including a significant investment in bikeways, greenways, sidewalks, traffic calming, all those other things that relate to an active transportation system that is not just about cars. In fact, when we talk about it being a people-first transportation plan, what we're really focused on in here is how are we moving people, not how are we moving cars or how are we moving vehicles, but how are we moving people. And I think that that's clear in the both the description of the plan, in the projects that are contained in it, and how we work through the update of walk and bike, that plan, and then some of the prioritization elements that are contained in that over the coming year is going to be an important part of how we, reset perhaps a bit on that and think about what those opportunities are. Councilmember, that was a great question. Thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. I do not have anybody else in my queue. Faye, I will turn to you if you have anything you'd like to say by way of concluding remarks.
Councilmember, I see a hand up down here.
Porterfield's got her.
Yeah.
Oh, somehow I do not see her hand. I'm sorry. Councilmember Porterfield, up there, it just showed up on my screen. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Councilmember Porterfield.
Thank you so very much, Chair. I was going to unmute and just let you know. So I appreciate you all for recognizing me. And I appreciate you all for having this meeting. Over 340 pages, I think it's 348 pages to this plan. So it definitely is a lot of information to digest. I do second some of the sentiments of my fellow colleagues. I think it would be a little bit easier for us to digest if we had, some visuals and PowerPoints and just some more, if there was a little more concrete information as opposed to just, opening it up for us to ask these questions. I think that just would have been helpful. So I don't know if there will be future opportunities, but I would like to give that feedback. The questions that I have are around the Department of Transportation that was mentioned a little bit earlier. So just a little bit of clarity on that. If there's a Department of Transportation that is assembled or created, what is the plan to actually, will that be dividing up our, current public works department, or what would that look like? How would we actually staff the Department of Transportation?
I think that largely, what we're doing is looking at all of our existing resources, council member, and thinking about how can we reorganize for more efficient, more effective, more accountable delivery, operations management, and so forth of our programs. So we're certainly looking at all of the talent and the positions that are available and how those things can be reorganized. As it would be done in any proper, organizational assessment of this magnitude, and recommendations then coming forth that would, to some of the comments that you've heard earlier, will likely require, some very targeted additional staffing in particular areas in order for us to really be able to successfully deliver not only the plan, but just deliver in our daily transportation activities throughout Metro Nashville.
Thank you. And I have just a few more follow-up questions.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm assuming that this plan will require a new director of transportation. I'm interested in knowing what the council still have a liaison similar to what we have now with Public Works and with Metro Water. Would there be a liaison to help support the council members? And then my last question would be regarding the funding. I'm just not really clear on the funding piece of it. So how would the department be funded without prior approval of funding?
So, the first question was about the liaison, and that would be a part of this overall evaluation and recommendation. But typical kinds of considerations and communications and so forth with council that are already traditionally in place and that help you in terms of that very important function of metro government. Those will be incorporated into any suggested new organizational structure, I would think, in a similar fashion. With regard to funding, the funding that's currently in place for these functions so for Public Works, there's funding that's in place for the transportation functions of Public Works. There's funding that's in place for the solid waste functions and so forth. And so, how that funding then would be directed to any the organizational changes that would be affected would be a part of the future budgeting process.
Thank you.
Councilmember Porterfield, does that cover you?
As best as, yes, it does. Thank you.
Feel free to come back with follow-ups if you choose, but for now, if that's got you, I will return to Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair O'Connell. This question, I guess, was probably for Mr. Bland. The plan calls for 68 new bus shelters and 25 expansions. And so that seems like pretty small numbers to me over the arc of a 10 or 12-year plan. I wonder, Mr. Bland, can you share how many shelters we currently have? We've all talked a lot about the importance of dignifying our transit riders. If you have to stand in a ditch, you're probably less inclined to be taking the bus if you don't feel kind of safe as you're standing alongside one of our major pikes. It's not a very enjoyable experience. And so I know we've talked a lot in the past about shelters being kind of low-hanging fruit. And again, around my kind of suggestion prior about, being intentional on return of investment and kind of front loading some of these things that can be scaled across the county at lower cost, like traffic calming, like transit shelters, and having that be something that really can be seen in every district at every stop where we have the highest ridership and so forth. So I'm sure there was a hierarchy in determining these 68 shelters and 25 expansions, but if you could just contextualize that for the viewing public and then for the council to understand how many of the we have now and what we're looking at per year in this plan?
Certainly, it's a great question. And it's certainly one of the issues we get the most requests for, both from council and from our riders and the general public. So in the overall WeGo system, countywide, there are about 2,000 total bus stops. Of those stops, about 210, it might be 212, might be 208, but in the 210 range currently have shelters. The program that was identified for this plan basically looked at, and this is pre-pandemic, so going back to about the last year, the average locations that boarded on average 25 or more people per day. So the 68 number came from stops where we are boarding on average 25 or more per day. And then the 25 expansions are frankly where we have shelters, but we're boarding numbers insufficient. We're boarding people in sufficient numbers where frankly, 3 people stand in the shelter and 8 people are kind of, left out in the cold. At present, if you include all of the boardings that happen at WeGo Central, at 4th and MLK, about 70% of our passenger boardings take place, quote, undercover, either at Central or, at a stop with a shelter. So the challenge is just, that you're absolutely right. You could, if we were able to build out these 68 and the 25 expansions, and do we lower that bar down to 20? Do we lower it to 15? So there's a couple of things we would probably expect to see based on experience. And by the way, under the 100 shelter program that was really initiated under Mayor Dean's administration, that 210 number is about a little over twice as many as we had as recently as 5 or 6 years ago. So part of the challenge in the shelter program, and we found that out about 2/3 of the way into the 100 shelter program, is the quote easy sites have been pretty well exhausted. The spots where we can just take a shelter and bolt it to a sidewalk have been pretty well exhausted. So they're starting to turn into more significant quote public works projects. And you can see that on Nolensville Pike right now with the project that we're doing. It's 18 stop improvements and the overall project cost is in about the $4.5 million range. So it's trying to be strategic in sequencing those to the highest boarding locations. We're also looking at things like Title VI and equity analysis to make sure that neighborhoods are properly represented in that fashion. Then what we also expect to see is where you have, where we install a shelter at a location, you will start to see migration from adjoining stops. So you might have, 2 people boarding at this stop, 2 people boarding at the next stop, 2 people boarding at the stop before. All of a sudden, when there's a better amenity, particularly if we can combine it with some of the pedestrian improvements that I know you champion, then all of a sudden that becomes a magnet. So more of that activity, you'll see lower boarding activity at some of the adjacent stops and increased boarding activity with the stops with the better amenities. So that's sort of, I would frankly characterize it as a starting point. We wanted to try to avoid being arbitrary and saying, it's 100 shelters and just saying, well, based on current boarding profiles, which, frankly are going to change over time, this is the threshold we set. If we set it at 20 boardings, maybe it's 140. If we set it at 10 boardings, maybe it's 300. We don't look at it as this is a project that will ever finish, to be perfectly honest.
Well, and I appreciate that. I think, with 210 shelters and 2,000 stops, so effectively 10% of our bus stops are sheltered. And so I know, we talk a lot about, our transit system being kind of, sprawled out at the end. You're getting out into kind of a suburban area and your ridership as you kind of get to the end of the line or, reapportioning how the stops are consolidated and so forth. But to your point, I think we will find if, you can't take the bus if you can't walk to the bus, like if you're going to have to stand in a ditch. So the fact that only 10 people get on at this stop at this particular time, that's probably because they don't feel safe standing there and they can't walk there anyway. So they're just going to get in their car or ride with a friend or do something else. So I would hope that, again, with a plan that has such a long arc, I appreciate that these are very targeted investments, not an arbitrary number, like that actually it means something, and that they have associated, I hope, safe crossing, sidewalk, turning that corner, helping somebody get out of the neighborhood, get to that bus stop and get at it. But I would hope as we, hopefully with a better bus plan, start to grow ridership, and that, we can then program in more shelters. And so that's just kind of what I'm, a little concerned about in the context of this plan is that, we do have some, good data and research and the equity tools. And I appreciate that that's going into what's shown presently in the plan. But, to the earlier point that we started out this with, and Mr. Mendez's point and Kathleen's, Councilor Murphy rather, 5, 10, 12 years, I don't want us to say, 6 through 8 shelters, check, done, right? And then we're not being intentional about coming back around and continuing, so that everything kind of has, network and expansion in mind.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And the other thing I would raise, and I know it's a point you've championed, and I know Council Lady Allen has done this as well, is as Metro is entertaining new developments, particularly in our key transit corridors, that frankly, some of that can be, for lack of a better word, included in the overall development project. What we found historically, and I will tell you in the last couple of years, this has gotten much better. The coordination with Metro Planning, with Public Works has been much better. But rather than saying, well, okay, let's add 10 more million to the public side, let's say we're going to start requiring more of those investments as part of the development approval process. And then you can significantly, so as an overall block gets upgraded that could today be a real barrier, lack of sidewalk connectivity, poor crossings, a bad bus stop, all of a sudden with a new development that goes in, you might be able to kill 3 birds with 1 stone.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson.
In my language, thank you.
Thank you both. And we are coming right up on time. I'm going to end with just a couple things here. Thank you to, again, our co-facilitators. We had 4 committees with all chairs represented today. Thank you to the mayor's office for working with so many of us on this. Thank you to the participants and guests for today's discussion. And finally, thank you to ITS and the Metro Nashville Network for making sure we have the tools to be able to pull off virtual meetings like this, and that the topics are recorded and archived online for citizens to review later. So we've already gotten some interest in that as the meeting has gone on. Appreciate everyone's interest in this. We've got a 384-page document spanning 10 to 12 years to chew on by Tuesday of next week. So I hope everybody does their homework and look forward to seeing everyone then. Thank you. We're adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.org.